My wife's affair with our neighbor led to her kicking me out with $50, $0 in debt, only to find out she secretly inherited $300, $0. Now we're in a brutal legal battle over the house and my rightful savings. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd end up here, kicked out of my own house, drowning in a mess I didn't see coming, all because my wife, Lisa, decided to cheat on me with our neighbor, Mark. The craziest part, she's been lying to my face for months, pretending everything's fine while she was sneaking around behind my back. The whole thing hit me like a ton of bricks when I accidentally found out the truth, and I swear, the moment I realized what she'd been up to, my world started falling apart. It all started about 6 months ago. Lisa had been acting different, more irritable, short-tempered, avoiding me for no good reason. At first, I just thought maybe she was stressed. At work or dealing with something personal. She'd brush me off when I asked, telling me I was overthinking, that everything was fine. But I noticed her phone was glued to her hand more than usual. She'd sneak around, lock her screen, hide her messages. I didn't want to be paranoid, so I let it go until I found her phone one night when she left it unattended. I wasn't snooping exactly, but I couldn't help noticing her messages kept popping up. One night I saw a text from Mark, our neighbor, that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight, miss you already." I froze. My heart started pounding. I knew Mark and I knew Lisa. I'd always trusted her, but that message, it was enough to make my stomach turn. I started digging through her messages, her social media, anything I could find. It was a slow burn, little things that didn't seem suspicious on their own but added up. Flirty texts, late-night calls, secret meetings. I even caught her in a lie about where she was one Saturday when I saw her car parked at Mark's house. That was the moment I knew for sure she was cheating. I didn't confront her right then. I was too stunned, too hurt. Instead, I started gathering evidence. Hidden cameras, recordings, anything I could find. I needed proof because I knew Lisa and she was a master at lying her way out of anything. She was always the bitchy type, quick to call me insecure or jealous when I asked questions. But this was different. This was real. She was lying about her feelings, her fidelity, everything I thought our marriage was built on. I remember the night I finally confronted her. I'd caught her sneaking out of the house after midnight, her phone buzzing in her hand. I blocked her path and she snapped at me, calling me paranoid, accusing me of invading her privacy. I told her I knew everything. Her face went pale, but her bitchy attitude kicked in fast. She started yelling, saying I was crazy, that I had no right to accuse her of anything. She called me insecure, said I was just jealous because I couldn't satisfy her anymore. She even had the nerve to cry, trying to make me feel guilty, but I wasn't falling for it. I told her I'd seen enough, that I was done. That confrontation was brutal. I felt every ounce of betrayal and anger boiling inside me. I'd given her everything, my time, my money, my trust, and she'd been screwing around with Mark right under my nose. It was like waking up from a nightmare. The worst part, she insisted she loved me, said it was just a mistake, that she'd stop, that she'd end things with Mark. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him in those messages, like he was her whole world and I was just some guy she was stuck with. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated. How could she do this? After all those years, after everything I'd done for her, she was out there, lying, screwing around, and then turning it around on me. I couldn't sleep. My head was a mess of thoughts. How did I miss the signs? Was I blind? Did I mean nothing to her? The worst part was feeling so powerless, like the rug had been pulled out from under me. I started questioning everything, myself, my worth, whether I'd missed the warning signs. I kept replaying her words, her lies, and every time I thought I'd get angry, I just felt numb. At first, I wanted to fix things. I wanted her to come clean, to admit she'd been wrong, and maybe, just maybe, we could work it out. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just a fling, it was betrayal on a level that broke my heart. I realized I had to make a choice. Do I fight to save what's left of the marriage, or do I walk away and start over? The pain was overwhelming, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when I had proof she'd been lying to me for months. That's when I started planning my next move, knowing that this wasn't just about her cheating. I had to think about the money, the house, my own future. Things were about to get even more complicated. After that night of confrontation, everything changed. I was angry, hurt, and honestly pretty damn confused. I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to come clean or change her mind. I had to act fast, not only to protect myself emotionally, but also financially. Lisa was always the kind of person who'd lie and manipulate her way out of anything, so I didn't trust her to do the right thing on her own. I started digging into the finances, bank accounts, investments, anything that could tell me what I was really dealing with. It turned out, Lisa had been hiding more than just her affair with Mark. I found out that she'd secretly inherited a significant sum from her late aunt, about $300, $0. She'd kept that from me, claiming she didn't want to share her inheritance. I was stunned. How did I miss that? We'd been married for 10 years and I'd always thought we were in this together. Turns out, she had a whole stash of money she never told me about, and she was planning to use it to her advantage. She'd been talking about refinancing the house, planning big trips and buying expensive stuff, all while keeping me in the dark. I realized her lies went way deeper than I thought. She'd been planning her escape for a long time, probably with Mark's help. That's when I decided I needed to get a lawyer. I couldn't let her get away with this, especially not with my savings, my house, and my future at stake. I knew she'd try to spin it, say I was paranoid or that I was trying to ruin her. But I had evidence now, screenshots, bank statements, and her own words. I sat down with a lawyer who specialized in family law, and we started drafting a plan. My goal was to get her out of the house, protect my assets, and make sure I got what was legally mine. The more I learned about her inheritance, the angrier I got. She'd been hiding her money, lying about her plans, and still she had the nerve to accuse me of being insecure or controlling. I had every reason to be suspicious. She was a master at lying, and her bitchy attitude made it clear she thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. But I wasn't going down that easy. I had proof now, and I was prepared to fight for what I deserved. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about respect, trust, and finally putting an end to her lies. My plan was simple in theory. I would serve her with legal papers, demand her to leave the house, and fight for my share of the assets, but I knew Lisa. She was stubborn, manipulative, and she'd try every trick in the book to turn the tables. That's why I also started recording everything. Her yelling, her lying, her trying to justify her affair. I wanted to have a solid case, not just emotional reactions. I was prepared to go all the way. I knew she'd try to spin it, accuse me of being jealous or controlling, but I had enough to show her true colors. One thing I didn't see coming was how quickly Lisa's attitude shifted once she found out I was serious. She became even more bitchy, yelling at me, calling me paranoid, saying I was ruining her life. She claimed she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that Mark was just a fling. But her words didn't match her actions. I saw the messages, how she looked at Mark, how she arranged secret meetups. That's when I realized this was no longer just about her cheating. It was about her trying to manipulate her way out of a situation she'd created for herself. I told her I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I told her I was done playing her game. I was going to make sure she left that house, and I was going to get my fair share of the money and assets I'd worked so hard for. It was a brutal realization, but I knew I had no choice. The betrayal had cut too deep, and I wasn't about to let her walk all over me. This was a fight I was determined to win. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, late-night calls, and trying to keep my emotions in check. I felt like I was walking a tightrope, on one side heartbreak and anger, on the other a cold determination to get what was rightfully mine. I knew she'd try to drag this out to make me doubt myself, but I was ready for that. I wasn't going to let her win, not after everything she'd done. I was planning my next move, knowing full well that this isn't over yet. Things were about to get even more intense, and I had a feeling the worst was still to come. The moment I decided to push forward with the legal battle, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, proof of her lies, and a clear direction. Dread because I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight, and she was the kind of person who'd screw over anyone to save herself. Still, I couldn't just sit back and let her take everything, especially not after discovering she'd inherited that $300, $0. That was my money, my savings, my future, everything I'd worked for. I was furious that she'd kept that from me, pretending to be the victim while secretly planning her escape. I pulled out all the stops, hired a good lawyer, gathered every piece of evidence I could find, and started preparing for the worst. I knew she'd try to twist the story, make it seem like I was the bad guy. I also knew she'd use her bitchy, manipulative attitude to try to turn the court against me. She'd probably claim I was controlling or jealous, things she'd used as excuses for her affair. But I had her messages, her financial records, her own words. I was ready to fight dirty if I had to, because I wasn't about to let her walk away with my savings or the house. Things got heated fast. Lisa snapped. When I served her the papers, she yelled, called me every name in the book, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. Her face twisted in anger, and she kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a fling, that she'd end it all. But I didn't buy it. Her words were hollow, and her eyes told a different story. She was trying to manipulate the situation, just like she always did. She kept throwing tantrums, saying I was being unfair, that I was trying to punish her for having feelings. That only made me more determined. I knew her game, and I wasn't going to let her win. The legal proceedings moved fast. I filed for full custody of the house, claiming that Lisa was hiding assets and had no right to the inheritance because she hadn't disclosed it in the divorce papers. I also demanded my share of the savings, what I knew was rightfully mine. Lisa, on the other hand, tried to play the victim card, acting all hurt and betrayed, acting like I was just some jealous husband trying to control her. She insisted that she loved me, that she'd never cheat, and that the inheritance was hers alone. But her words didn't match her actions. I had the proof, the texts, the bank statements, the witness statements from neighbors who saw her sneaking around. The court hearings were intense. Lisa showed her bitchy side more than once, screaming, crying, trying to intimidate the judge. She accused me of being paranoid and controlling, even claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation. I kept my cool, presenting all the evidence I had gathered. I knew that if I played my cards right, I could turn the tide in my favor. I also hired a private investigator to dig into her finances further. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into secret accounts, probably planning to leave with her new lover and a hefty sum of my money. That was the final straw. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude grew even more hostile. She started accusing me of everything, saying I was just jealous of Mark, that I didn't understand her, that I'd never really loved her. Her words were venomous and her bitchiness knew no bounds, but I was beyond caring. I knew what she was trying to do, and I had enough to push forward. I was prepared for a long fight, and I knew I had the upper hand. The inheritance, the evidence, my legal team, all of it was on my side now. I just had to hold out and wait for the court to see through her lies. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of clarity amid all the chaos. I'd been by her betrayal, but now I was finally taking control. I realized how deeply she'd manipulated me, how much she'd lied to cover her tracks. I also learned a hard lesson about trust. Never take someone's words at face value, especially when they're as bitchy and manipulative as Lisa. I saw her true colors now, and I knew I had to fight not just for the house or the money, but for my dignity. This wasn't over yet, but I could see the end coming into view, one where I might finally get some justice after months of betrayal and deception. The court dates kept coming faster than I expected, and each one felt like another punch to the gut. Lisa's attitude only got worse. She was throwing everything she had, more accusations, tears, and bitchy snipes, trying to sway the judge with her manipulative crap. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. That's just who she is. A liar, a manipulator, and a master at making herself look like the victim. But I had my evidence, and I knew the truth. I also knew she was desperate to hold onto her secret inheritance and the house, which she kept claiming was her right, even though she'd lied through her teeth about it for months. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. The judge had scheduled a hearing to determine the division of assets, including the inheritance. I felt a mixture of hope and dread. Hope because I knew I had a solid case. Dread because I knew Lisa would pull every trick she could to spin it against me. That day, I sat in the courtroom, watching as her bitchy attitude resurfaced. She was dressed to impress, trying to look innocent but failing miserably. Her voice was strained when she, trying to convince everyone she was the victim, that I'd been controlling and jealous from the start. I took the stand later and I laid everything out, proof of her affair, her secret inheritance, her attempts to hide assets, her manipulative behavior. I told the court about the texts, the bank statements, her sneaking around at night. I explained how she'd lied about her plans, about her feelings for Mark, and how she'd been planning her escape for months. I emphasized that I had a right to my fair share, that I'd been betrayed, but I still wanted to settle this fairly. I kept my tone calm, but inside I was raging. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be played anymore. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing the evidence. Lisa's lawyer tried to discredit my evidence, calling it circumstantial, but the judge wasn't buying her bullshit. The inheritance was clear. Her own documents proved she'd inherited that money from her aunt, and she hadn't disclosed it in the divorce papers, which was a major legal mistake. The court also looked at the bank records showing her funneling money into accounts she hadn't declared. It was obvious she'd been hiding assets, trying to cheat her way out of her obligations. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude turned even more bitchy. She started yelling at her lawyer, accusing him of not doing enough, saying I was trying to ruin her life. She called me jealous, possessive, and all sorts of other names. She even accused me of trying to manipulate the court with my fake evidence. I just sat there, watching her tantrum, knowing that her lies were crumbling. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. This was her true self, and it was finally coming out in court. The day the judge announced the verdict, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The judge ruled that I was entitled to a significant portion of the inheritance, about $150, $0, and that I was to retain ownership of the house. Lisa was ordered to pay me my fair share of the savings, which I'd calculated based on the records I'd collected. Her face went pale when she heard the results. She tried to argue, to cry, to throw a fit, but the judge wasn't having any of it. The evidence was too strong. Lisa's manipulations had failed, and she was left with no choice but to accept the ruling. That night, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I'd fought hard, more than I thought I could, and I'd won. But the emotional toll was heavy. I'd been betrayed by someone I loved, someone I trusted. Implicitly, I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let things get so out of control. Still, I knew one thing for sure: I was done with her lies. I had my money, my house, and a new sense of clarity about who Lisa really was. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was finally taking back control of my life. It wasn't perfect, and I still had a long road ahead, but I was ready to rebuild without her. After the court's decision, I thought things would finally settle down. I'd fought hard and I'd won a good chunk of what was owed to me. But Lisa, she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The way she reacted after losing in court was something I'll never forget. She didn't just sulk or accept defeat. She went full bitchy, trying to drag me down even further. She started showing her true colors more openly, yelling at me whenever she saw me, calling me a greedy bastard, and accusing me of trying to ruin her life just because I wanted what was legally mine. I knew her well enough by then. She's the kind of person who's never satisfied, always looking for a way to twist the story to her advantage. So I stayed cautious. I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation, maybe even try to retaliate in ways I hadn't anticipated. That's when I decided to take some precautions, changed the locks, hired a security system, and made sure I had witnesses for everything. I wasn't about to let her do anything reckless or stupid just because she was angry. What came next was a series of small, brutal blows. She started spreading rumors around the neighborhood that I was an abusive husband, that I'd been controlling and manipulative from the start. I heard from neighbors that she was telling everyone I was a terrible person, trying to turn them against me. That was her typical move: lie, manipulate, and try to smear my reputation. It was disgusting, but I knew it was just her way of trying to claw her way back into control. I didn't respond to her venom directly. Instead, I focused on legal protections and making sure my assets were secure. I also reached out to my lawyer about her latest attempts to harass me. We decided to file a restraining order because I was worried she might escalate her manipulations or even try to do something stupid, like damage the house or steal something valuable. I wasn't going to let her ruin what was left of my life just because she couldn't get her way. Meanwhile, I started thinking about moving on, getting a new place, cutting all ties with her. I realized that holding onto the house or trying to fix things with Lisa was pointless. The trust was broken beyond repair. I also started seeing a therapist just to process everything. I'd gone through a lot of emotional trauma, and I needed help to sort through the anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. It was hard, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to focus on rebuilding myself, even if that meant starting over from scratch. The hardest part was accepting that I'd lost a part of my life, my marriage, my home, the future I'd envisioned. But I also learned something crucial: don't ignore red flags. Lisa's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all added up. If I'd trusted my instincts earlier, maybe I could have avoided this disaster. But now, I was finally free from her control, and I was determined to make a fresh start. I knew she'd never change, and I didn't want to waste another second on someone who'd betray me so badly. In the end, I realized that revenge isn't about hurting her back, at least not anymore. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I refused to let her define me or ruin what I've built. I learned to stand up for myself, to fight for what's rightfully mine, and to trust myself again. Moving forward, I know I'll be more cautious, more aware, and more careful about who I let into my life. Because sometimes, the biggest betrayals come from the people you trust the most. And the only way to heal is to take control, stand tall, and never let anyone make you feel small again. Looking back, I realize this whole ordeal has changed me in ways I never expected. I used to think marriage was about trust, loyalty, and building a future together. Turns out, sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most capable of tearing everything apart. Lisa's betrayal cut deep, but it also taught me a hard lesson about paying attention to the signs, things like her bitchy attitude, her secretive behavior, and the way she dismissed my concerns as jealousy. I ignored those red flags for too long, thinking everything was fine when it was. Losing the house, my savings, and my sense of security hurt more than I want to admit. But what hurt even more was realizing how much I had trusted her, only to find out she was actively planning her escape from everything we built. The inheritance she kept hidden and then tried to claim as her own was the final dagger. It's infuriating to see someone manipulate the system for their own gain, especially when they've already betrayed you emotionally. Now, I stand here, with a clearer head and a stronger sense of myself. I've learned to be cautious, to listen to my instincts, and to never ignore the warning signs again. I've also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. I fought hard in court, I protected my assets, and I made sure she couldn't manipulate her way out of the consequences. That victory, however small it seems in the grand scheme, was mine. It reminded me that even in the face of betrayal, integrity and perseverance can win. Most importantly, I've come to accept that some relationships are beyond saving. Not everyone is worth your trust, and not every betrayal can be forgiven. Moving forward, I focus on rebuilding myself, my future, and my sense of stability. I've started therapy, reconnected with friends, and even begun planning for a new chapter in my life. It's not easy, and I still have days when I feel the sting of her lies, but I know I won't let her define me anymore. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust yourself. Pay attention to the red flags and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Betrayal hurts, but it also reveals who people really are. And in the end, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. Keep fighting, keep moving forward, and never let anyone make you feel small just because they're too cowardly to face their own mistakes. I survived this chaos, and I'm stronger for it. That's all that matters now.